We've got other royal rifts, of course. But this doesn't just put her at, a distance from her parents, but also it's going to affect her relationship with her sister, because we understand Princess Beatrice is taking a different approach, not stepping back from her parents.
She has watched him fall, not the slow, graceful descent of a man accepting his fate, but the ugly, public implosion of everything a father is supposed to be. From the quiet dignity of a Falklands War hero to the global humiliation of a man whose name became synonymous with scandal, Princess Beatrice has observed every excruciating chapter of her father's unraveling, and for years she did it in silence. Not a single word, not a single public defense, not even a whisper of explanation. But silence, as the world is finally learning, is never the same as indifference. And at 37 years old, Beatrice has run out of road to stay quiet. October 30th, 2025, began like any other autumn morning in the British royal household. But by noon, Buckingham Palace had issued a statement that would fundamentally alter the York family forever. King Charles, in an unprecedented act of institutional severance, formally initiated the process to remove the style, titles, and honors of Prince Andrew. The Duke of York title was gone. The rank of prince was gone. The Knight of the Garter, one of the oldest and most prestigious honors in the British monarchy, was gone. The formal eviction notice from Royal Lodge, the Windsor property where Andrew had lived for over 2 decades, was served on the same day. In a single morning, Andrew Albert Christian Edward, once the Queen's favorite son, became simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a private citizen with a criminal investigation hanging over his name. And somewhere in London, a 37-year-old woman who had dedicated years of her life to quietly protecting that man's reputation watched it all happen in real time. There's a version of Prince Andrew that the British public has almost entirely forgotten, and it is the version that Princess Beatrice was raised to believe in. In the spring of 1982, before Beatrice was born, Andrew was 22 years old and serving as a Sea King helicopter co-pilot with 820 Naval Air Squadron aboard HMS Invincible. Argentina had invaded the Falkland Islands, and Britain was going to war to take them back. The cabinet in London looked at the situation and made a practical calculation. Andrew was second in line to the throne. The risk of him being killed or captured in active combat was a risk the government did not want to take. They went to Buckingham Palace and formally asked that Andrew be reassigned to a desk job away from the conflict. Queen Elizabeth said no. She told the government that her son would serve on his ship, as any other officer would. She overruled the cabinet personally and sent her boy to war. What Andrew did in that war was not ceremonial. He flew anti-submarine missions in hostile waters. He flew casualty evacuations under fire. He performed one of the most psychologically demanding tasks of the entire conflict, hovering his helicopter near Royal Navy vessels to act as a decoy for incoming Argentine Exocet missiles. He was placing his body and his aircraft between the enemy's weaponry and his fleet. When the container ship Atlantic conveyor was struck by an Exocet and 26 sailors needed to be pulled from the water, Andrew was part of a crew that rescued them. One of those sailors, Michael Redfoot, later recalled the moment he climbed inside the helicopter, and a fellow sailor pointed out that the co-pilot was the Queen's son. Redfoot said Andrew was very cool, just like the rest of the helicopter crew. His squadron commander described him in writing as an excellent pilot and a very promising officer. Princess Beatrice was born in August 1988. Her father was already this person by the time she arrived. She grew up inside the version of Andrew that existed before the entitlement consumed him, and that version was real. It had witnesses. It had documented proof. It had the testimony of the sailors he rescued. Beatrice did not invent her admiration for her father. She inherited it from a country that once genuinely shared it. But there's another version of Prince Andrew that exists in parallel with the Falklands hero, and this version has been documented by dozens of people who worked alongside him for years. Royal biographer Andrew Loney spent 4 years researching his 2025 book, entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. He conducted over 300 interviews with people who had direct, personal experience of Andrew behind closed doors. The portrait that emerged from those interviews is one of the most comprehensive and damning accounts of private royal behavior ever compiled. Staff who worked at Andrew's residences described a man of extraordinary and petty demands. He kept 72 cuddly toys arranged on his bed, many of them dressed as miniature sailors, positioned in strict size order according to a laminated reference photograph that was kept on the premises. New employees received a full day of training specifically on how to arrange the toys correctly. If they were placed in the wrong order, Andrew did not quietly correct the mistake. He lost his temper. He dismissed a member of staff because that person had chosen to wear a nylon tie to work. He fired another employee because the man had a mole on his face. Among British diplomats who had been posted to the Gulf states and witnessed Andrew operating in his capacity as Special Trade Envoy, his unofficial nickname was HBH, His Buffoon Highness. This is the man whose reputation Princess Beatrice spent years trying quietly to manage. She had no official role. She was never his spokesperson, but multiple royal insiders have described her as the family member most emotionally invested in the idea that Andrew could recover his standing, the one who worked hardest to believe there was a path back to respectability. In November 2019, the BBC's flagship current affairs program Newsnight had been pursuing an interview with Prince Andrew for months. Producer Sam McAllister had worked persistently to get access. The palace had resisted, and then, unexpectedly, something changed. What changed was Beatrice. 3 days before filming was scheduled to begin, Princess Beatrice arrived at the pre-interview negotiation. Nobody had invited her. Nobody had put her on the guest list. She arrived because she wanted to be there for her father, and because she believed, with the conviction of someone who genuinely loved him, that giving him the opportunity to speak directly to the public was the right thing to do. Sam McAllister, in her own published account, described Beatrice as the rainmaker, a term used for someone who pulls off major deals. She told the Daily Mail, "In my view, when Princess Beatrice came along unexpectedly to the face-to-face negotiation, which happened just 3 days before this interview physically happened, I called her the rainmaker. The reason is because she was protecting her father's interests. She was super polite, super nice, super friendly. But in that room with the people that were there, she was the one that had his interest purely at heart. And it was clear that if we did not answer her questions well, that this interview was never going to happen. That is why I believe she was profoundly important in the conversation." Beatrice did not just support the interview. According to multiple accounts, she was instrumental in making Andrew feel confident enough to go through with it. She told him it would help. She was there to ensure he did not pull out. McAllister also revealed the human motivation behind Andrew's agreement. The human reason was he was about to turn 60. His daughter was about to get married, and he wanted, as a father, to walk her down the aisle and return to the life that he had had before these onerous allegations and friendships hung over him like a dark cloud. So his motivation is to, I suppose, clear his name. On November 16, 2019, Prince Andrew sat across from journalist Emily Maitlis on the BBC and delivered what communications professionals would subsequently, unanimously, and without significant dissent describe as one of the most catastrophic television appearances by a public figure in the entire history of British broadcasting. He claimed he could not have been at a specific location on a specific evening because he had spent that night at a Pizza Express restaurant in Woking. He stated that a condition stemming from an overdose of adrenaline during the Falklands War had left him temporarily unable to sweat, which he offered as evidence against a witness's description. He said he did not regret his associations with controversial figures because those relationships had been useful for business opportunities. Within 24 hours, he had announced his resignation from all public duties. Within 2 years, he had been stripped of his military titles and patronages. Within 6 years, he had lost every title, honor, and official residence the crown had given him. And Beatrice had been the person who made the interview happen. She has never spoken publicly about what she felt when she watched it air, but the documented record is unambiguous. The daughter who loved her father most, the one who walked into a room uninvited because she wanted to protect him, was the same person who handed him the platform that destroyed him. Princess Beatrice married Edoardo Mapelli Mazzi on July 17, 2020. The ceremony took place at the Royal Chapel of All Saints at Royal Lodge, the very Windsor property where her father lived. The guest list was approximately 20 people. No official photographs were released to the public that included Andrew, despite the fact that he walked his daughter down the aisle and played a central role in the day. The original plan had been entirely different. Beatrice and Eduardo had been due to marry on May 29th at the Chapel Royal, St. James's Palace, with a full reception at Buckingham Palace, and a guest list of well over 100 people. It was going to be a proper royal wedding, celebrated in the traditional manner, covered by dozens of photographers and broadcast around the world. The public explanation for the change was the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions on gatherings that came with it. That explanation was partially true, but palace sources confirmed to multiple royal correspondents that Andrew's cascading personal scandal was an equally significant factor. The palace had concluded that a high-profile wedding with official photographs and extensive media coverage would inevitably become a story about Andrew's disgrace, rather than Beatrice's happiness. The only way to give Beatrice the day she deserved was to shrink it until it was almost invisible. Andrew walked his daughter down the aisle that day. He gave a speech. He was present for every moment that mattered to him as a father. And then he was removed from every official photograph. Royal editor Camilla Tominey described the situation with precision. There's this sense that, unfortunately, they have had to erase Andrew, and by association Fergie, from this. The one element of the day that genuinely spoke to the emotional support surrounding Beatrice came from Queen Elizabeth, who lent her granddaughter a gown. The dress was a remodeled Norman Hartnell design from 1962 that the Queen had worn herself decades earlier and had kept in her personal collection. It was altered to fit Beatrice and given to her to wear on her wedding day. The Queen could not undo what Andrew had done. She could not restore the wedding that Beatrice had originally planned, but she could offer the gown from her own wardrobe, and in doing so, she told her granddaughter something that no public statement could have communicated as clearly. You are still loved. You are still ours. You are still family. Andrew was there on that wedding day, present and loving and proud, and then officially he was not there at all. That act of erasure, chosen by Beatrice's own team for Beatrice's own protection, is the closest she has ever come to making a public statement about the cost of being her father's daughter. In the months following Andrew's formal detitling in October 2025, Princess Beatrice did something that surprised a number of royal observers. She kept showing up. In January 2026, she was photographed horseback riding with Andrew near Windsor Castle. Her 4-year-old daughter, Sienna, rode alongside them. It was a 45-minute outing, in a location where photographers could and did capture the images, which means everyone involved understood those photographs were going to circulate. A source close to the family told The Sun, "It is completely untrue that she has cut him off. She has seen him several times this year and is supportive." When Beatrice's second daughter, Athena, was christened in December 2025, Andrew attended the ceremony. He was kept away from the official photographs, following what had become an established pattern. But he was there as a grandfather, present in the room for one of the most significant moments in his daughter's life, even as his own life continued to unravel. But there is a limit to what even the most devoted daughter can endure. In February 2026, Andrew was arrested on his 66th birthday on suspicion of misconduct in public office, held in custody for 11 hours, and released under investigation. The arrest came after emails showed Andrew had sent Epstein photographs of Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie when they were in their 20s. 2 years after he told the BBC he had ended all contact with the convicted sex offender. For Beatrice, this was a turning point. Sources close to the family told People magazine that the princesses have been putting pieces of the puzzle together, realizing they may have been used. The Daily Beast reported that Beatrice and Eugenie are distancing themselves from their disgraced father after his arrest, saying they now wonder if they were used as unwitting pawns in their father's web of questionable associations. The sisters have taken different positions. Princess Eugenie has reportedly cut off all contact with Andrew entirely. A source told the Mail on Sunday, "There's no contact at all, nothing. It's Brooklyn Beckham level. She has completely cut him off." Beatrice, by contrast, is described by insiders as trying to walk the fine line of not cutting her father off and yet remaining close with the royal family. Crisis expert Lauren Beeching told the iNewspaper, "Personally, I don't think the smartest move is for them to publicly announce that they're distancing themselves from their father. The more effective approach is simply not to be seen with him and not make a spectacle of it. But for Beatrice, who has spent her entire adult life trying to manage the impossible contradiction of loving a man whom the world has condemned, the quiet withdrawal may be the only form of speech she has left. The question that nobody can yet answer is whether that protection will hold. Royal commentator Jack Royston has noted that being photographed publicly with Andrew has become a risk for Beatrice, not because she is doing anything morally wrong, but because in a media environment where every image functions as a statement, association carries consequences that are entirely independent of intent. Former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond offered what may be the most human assessment of Beatrice's position. Beatrice must have known she would very probably be seen out riding with him, so we can take this as an open show of loyalty. It must be incredibly difficult to see your parents so humiliated, isolated, and depressed, and Beatrice, as the older daughter, probably feels a greater responsibility for their well-being. But responsibility has its limits. Andrew Loney, the author who documented Andrew's downfall, has cautioned the royal family about potentially more damaging revelations still to come. Each fresh Epstein disclosure, a source told Radar Online, feels like a fresh blow for the sisters. Just when they think the worst of it might be behind them, something else surfaces and drags it all back into the spotlight. It's completely emotionally exhausting for them. The sisters, the source added, understand that how they respond now, the choices they make, the company they keep, and the image they project will shape their long-term standing. And through all of it, Beatrice has kept building her own life in parallel. She works in technology and climate finance. She speaks at the World Economic Forum in Davos on climate and economic policy. She runs her own company, Purpose Economy Intelligence Limited. She is a patron of the Helen Arkell Dyslexia Charity, a cause she has spoken about with genuine personal passion since she herself was diagnosed with dyslexia as a child. She has 2 daughters, a stable marriage, and a professional identity that exists entirely on its own terms. But the position Beatrice occupies today, at 37 years old, is genuinely without precedent in modern royal history. She is the daughter of a man who has been formally stripped of his royal status, who has been arrested by the police, and whose official documents will not be released to the public for another 54 years. She retains her own HRH title and her own princess status for now, but whether those survive the continued fallout of her father's affairs is a question that has not been answered. She is performing resilience in public. She is processing betrayal in private. She is raising her children in the shadow of a story that is not finished. She is maintaining contact with a father that the institution she belongs to has formally cast out. She is doing all of this without saying a single word about any of it to anyone outside the family. For 37 years, silence has been Beatrice's protection. But the question that nobody can yet answer is whether there is a version of events still to come that will finally force Andrew's daughter to speak. This story is nowhere near finished, and when it finally does reach its conclusion, Princess Beatrice is going to be standing at the center of it whether she chooses to be or not.